The world of entertainment spans many worlds, so it's no shock that lines often blur between them. During the height of the circus freak era, countless individuals became living attractions, some by will, many through exploitation. From giants who loomed over crowds to people small enough to vanish inside a trunk, here are the 15 shocking circus freaks that actually existed. Number 15. Jakob Nacken. Jakob Nacken was born in 1906 in Dusseldorf and grew to 7 feet 3 inches. People noticed his size first, but it wasn't the most interesting thing about him. He worked in the circus before the Second World War, performing mostly because that's where his height fit. He was kind to children, respectful to anyone who approached. When he was drafted into the Wehrmacht, he didn't belong in that role. In 1944, he surrendered near Calais to a British soldier barely over 5 feet tall. A photograph of that moment became famous, showing the strange scale between them. After the war, Jakob moved to the U.S. and tried to find normal work. He eventually worked at a department store as Santa Claus. His hands were enormous but gentle. People remembered him not for towering over others, but for never using it to make himself more important. He didn't chase fame. He just lived quietly in a body the world never ignored. Number 14. The longest bearded lady. Madame de Vere didn't ask for attention. She just showed up and outlasted most of the sideshow world. She was born in Kentucky in the 1840s or early 1850s, and her full name is still debated, even after 100 years. Some say Mary, while others say Jane. What's certain is that she grew a 14-inch beard and never hid it. She started performing in 1884 at Huber's Museum in New York, then toured steadily with Sells Brothers, Campbell Brothers in 1906, Yankee Robinson in 1908, and was still going in 1912 with Patterson shows. That same year, while in Olwine, Iowa, she got sick and passed away. Her beard drew stares, but it was her consistency and refusal to shrink from her appearance that made her stand out. She didn't play into jokes. She didn't play the victim either. She worked, show after show. She held her place on stage while others faded out. In a world that tried to turn her into a punchline, she kept standing firm. Number 13. Baron Pauci. Peppino Magro, better known as Baron Pauci, stood just 15 inches tall. Born in Sicily in 1894, he barely survived a major earthquake that buried his home. His size let him slip through a gap others couldn't. That moment changed his course. He moved to the U.S. and joined the Ringling Brothers before becoming a staple at Coney Island's Dreamland Sideshow. Pauci wasn't content to be a quiet background act. He wore sharp suits, bet on horses, drank what he wanted, and chased women with reckless charm. His personality was bigger than the tent. Sometimes it costs him jobs. Other times it brought crowds back just to hear what he'd say next. He married a petite woman named Mavis Lane in 1931, but the relationship didn't last. She left, tired of his constant flirting. Still, he kept returning to the spotlight. By the mid-1930s, Pauci was back with the Ringling Brothers, closing out a career that never once asked for permission. Number 12. Joan Wisnant. Joan Wisnant came into this weird and wonderful world without arms and never asked anyone to feel sorry for her. Her parents rejected every circus offer that came, with her mother saying firmly, "She's not for sale." Joan learned to use her feet for everything her hands couldn't do, writing letters, cooking, sewing, and even playing the guitar. She rested the instrument on her lap and played with her toes, forming perfect chords. As a teenager, she appeared at state fairs and Ripley's events, not as an exhibit, but as a musician. Once, when a boy mocked her, she smiled and played louder. "People expect tears," she said, "but I give them a song." Her performances left crowds quiet, more moved than entertained. Joan died in 1998, having built a life defined by skill, not sympathy. She didn't perform tragedy, she replaced it with sound. Every single note she played was her answer to pity, and it always rang steady and whole. Number 11. Zelda Rubinstein. She was 4 feet and 3, but no one ever forgot her voice. Born in Pittsburgh to Jewish immigrant parents, she spent 2 quiet decades working as a medical lab tech. Then something shifted. In her 40s, she turned toward acting. It wasn't a typical path, and her size often limited her options. Still, she found roles that mattered. Her breakout came as Tangina, the psychic medium in Poltergeist. That voice, soft but firm, strange but commanding, made her unforgettable. She embraced unusual characters and gave them weight, not parody. She acted in 16 Candles, Picket Fences, and narrated Scariest Places on Earth. Zelda never distanced herself from her look. She used it, not for laughs or pity, but for presence. She also spoke out for LGBTQ+ rights at a time when few others in Hollywood would. Zelda wasn't trying to be big. She was just being herself, and somehow, that ended up being more lasting than most ever manage. Number 10. The Joined Performers. Lucio and Simplicio were born conjoined twins in 1908. They were taken to Coney Island as children and displayed until the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children intervened. With no family to claim them, the Philippine ambassador adopted them and gave them an education. Music became their shared ground. They learned piano and harmony, later performing under their own names instead of being shown as curiosities. In 1929, they married a pair of identical twin sisters, creating one of the most unusual family stories in vaudeville. Their act drew attention for talent, not deformity. In 1936, Lucio caught pneumonia and died suddenly. Doctors tried to separate them to save Simplicio, and while the operation succeeded, infection followed. Simplicio died days later. They were finally apart, though they had never wished for it. History remembers them not for their connection, but for how they turned it into unity and purpose. Number 9. The Lapland Giantess. Christina Larsdottir, known as the Lapland Giantess, stood nearly 2 meters tall by the age of 18. Born in 1819 in Sweden, she was noticed everywhere she went. Stockholm treated her like a landmark, and soon, the rest of Europe followed. She met King Carl XIV Johan in 1837, and after that, invitations came from Denmark, Germany, and England. People whispered about her gender, but medical examinations confirmed she was female. Christina understood that her height drew crowds, and she used it wisely. She cleared her family's debts, purchased property, and managed her finances with care. Fluent in multiple languages, she knew her worth. In 1854, a severe snowstorm injured her, and infection took hold. She died at 35. Years later, scientists unearthed her remains to study what they had once refused to understand. But her true legacy wasn't her skeleton. It was her control. She stood tall, not as a wonder, but as a woman who owned her difference. What do you think about her? Let us know. Number 8. Joe the Leopard Boy. A.E. Bichelle lived under a spotlight he never asked for. His body carried patches of dark and light skin from leucoderma, forming natural patterns that reminded people of an animal's coat. It made him visible, and it trapped him there. Promoted by Barnum as Joe the Leopard Boy, he was displayed in dime museums and traveling exhibitions, small rooms where people stared, pointed, and whispered. Behind the curtain, he lived quietly, with no identity beyond the one sold to strangers. No interviews, no journals, no family records, just stories told by others. In 1909, he fell through a backstage trapdoor and died instantly at 40. The accident barely made the papers. Joe was marketed as a curiosity, but he was a man caught between survival and humiliation. His skin made him stand out, and the world called that entertainment. All he ever wanted was to exist as himself, but in that time, People didn't allow difference to mean humanity. Number 7. A bodybuilder romance. Miriam Kate Williams didn't come from a world of applause. She made her place in it. Known as Volcana, she had already built a reputation for real strength by the time she met William Hedley Roberts. He owned a gym. He was married. But everything shifted. They became known as Atlas and Volcana and were already performing by 1892. What people saw on stage was a duo. But off stage, she did the real work. Volcana lifted carts, dragged people from floods, and pulled horses from fires. Her body bore the scars, and she never once covered them. While Roberts relied on stunts, she earned medals from actual rescues and feats of power. They stayed together for decades and raised 6 kids. When Volcana died in 1946, she wasn't remembered as the woman who broke social norms. She was remembered for the weight she carried. Not just physical strength, but everything else that came with living outside expectation and never needing to explain it. Number 6. The Mysterious Dancer. Henry Crip Hurd was born in 1923 and found rhythm early. As a teenager, he danced in small Memphis clubs before tragedy changed everything. A train accident took his right arm and leg. Most would have quit, but Henry refused. He rebuilt his balance from the ground up, training until he could move smoothly on one side than most could with 2. Crowds couldn't look away. He joined black vaudeville circuits, where his timing and rhythm stood apart. In 1948, his role in Boarding House Blues made him a sensation, his energy impossible to follow. Fame didn't change the rest of his life. He was robbed in 1959, then suffered a stroke in 1960. Still, he found his way back to the stage until he retired in 1971. He died in 1991. Henry wasn't a symbol or a statement. He was a man who danced because he still could, and that to him was enough. Number 5. The Sacred Hairy Family of Burma. They were born with a rare genetic condition called hypertrichosis, but the world never bothered learning the name. It just stared. It started with She Maong, born in 1796 and covered head to toe in hair. He was presented to the King of Ava as a child and lived in court more as decoration than as a person. But he was bright, respectful, and known for his calm nature. His daughter Mafoon inherited the same condition, and so did her children. They became known as the Sacred Hairy Family of Burma. They were passed through royal courts, scientific circles, and eventually ended up under circus tents. When British forces took control of Burma in 1885, the family escaped through jungles and chaos to reach England. Barnum took them on tour in 1888. Crowds saw strangeness. Doctors saw intelligence. Eventually, they disappeared from public life. No records after. Just a single faded photograph of 4 faces that never got to rest. Number 4. Millie and Christine McCoy. Millie and Christine were born conjoined in 1852 on a North Carolina plantation. Joined at the hip, they shared internal organs, but maintained distinct personalities. They were taken and sold as infants for exhibition before being reunited with their parents through the efforts of James P. Smith, who also purchased their freedom. Smith invested in their education, teaching them languages, music, and dance. Over time, they built their act as the Two-Headed Nightingale, captivating audiences with harmonized singing. They performed internationally, including under P.T. Barnum's management, earning fame and money through their talent. A fire later destroyed much of their fortune, forcing them to keep performing to survive. Both sisters died of tuberculosis in 1912 at the age of 61. Their lives were shaped by exploitation, but defined by persistence. Millie and Christine never escaped public curiosity, yet they built dignity out of it. They didn't just survive together, they mastered a world that refused to see them separately. Number 3. Violetta. Violetta was born without arms or legs, a rare condition called tetra-amelia syndrome, yet she lived with startling capability. She combed her hair, threaded needles, and stitched fabric with calm precision. Doctors called her body perfectly proportioned and free of defects besides her missing limbs. On stage, she was introduced as the beautiful armless and legless Venus, and audiences stared in disbelief. Her movements were graceful, controlled, deliberate. She never presented herself as an object of pity. When a spectator crossed the line or reached too far, she'd strike back with her shoulder. No words, just self-respect. Her act wasn't built around deformity, but defiance. People came expecting sadness and left silent, unsure of what they'd witnessed. Violetta spent her life proving she wasn't limited by what was missing. She didn't ask for attention. She earned it by doing everything people thought impossible, with poise that didn't need defense. Her name faded, but her presence still feels undeniable. All right now, let's move to Number 2. Willie Popeye Ingram. Willie Ingram's life changed when he discovered that his eyes could protrude nearly an inch from their sockets. The condition, painful but controllable, followed him from childhood. Born in Decatur in the 1930s, he realized early that normal life wouldn't fit him, so he turned difference into livelihood. He joined Walter L. Wanis and Sons' Sideshow, where his act drew curiosity and unease in equal measure. Some spectators laughed, some looked away, but most couldn't forget him. He appeared in Ripley's Believe It or Not and even took a small role in the 1974 cult horror film The Freak Maker. Away from the stage, he lived simply and privately, without the noise that came with fame. Willie wasn't chasing stardom. He was trying to turn something uncontrollable into purpose. The spotlight didn't define him. It gave him a space to exist on his own terms. People came to stare, but what they left remembering was his calm endurance. Number 1. The Texas Talker. Nikos Briscoe made a name as the Texas Talker, but he wasn't out there chasing celebrity. He worked the front of the circus tent, not inside it. His job was to stop people, get them to pay attention, and guide them through the last living pieces of an art form almost no one understood anymore. He wore a cowboy hat, spoke with rhythm, and didn't use fake charm. His words weren't about shock, they were about curiosity. He told stories of acts most people wouldn't believe until they saw them. He respected every name he pitched, and he never mocked a single one. Outside the tent, he became the Pink Velvet Witch, another performer in his own right. But at the gate, he protected the old ways. The tradition of pitchmen was dying, and Nikos knew it. He didn't perform for the cameras. He performed for strangers who needed something real. No tricks, just voice, memory, and something worth stopping for. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, share it, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon.